Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Hello, my friend Josh Brown, mixing it up on an afternoon because there's a bit of last minute news doing the rounds in regards to Bioshock 4.
Yes, just a smidge, Scott, because, if you're like me, you might have forgotten that this game was actually officially announced like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
In December 2019, 2K came out and finally announced that they're working on a brand new Bioshock game. It's being produced by a brand new studio called Cloud Chamber. That studio last night, or recently anyway, this has been picked up by a bunch of different news outlets. The studio recently put out an advertisement for a senior writer on the project, and it's given us a few ideas of what shape the game is taking currently, because some of the things that they're looking for is, quote, someone who can weave impactful character-driven stories in an open world setting. Now, as you might be aware, the previous Bioshock games were not open world games, but it seems like this one is going to be, which I do think makes sense and does line up with some rumors from like 3 or 2 years ago at this point, really old ones that suggested that it was going to go open world, and this little description of the job seems to confirm that, as they're looking for a writer who can write open world narratives, and they later on go to say who can write both primary and secondary quests. So it seems like we're getting an open world with your standard fare of you're going to have some side missions, you're going to have some main missions, you're probably going to have some feathers to collect, or whatever the Bioshock 4 equivalent is. Yeah, some secret plasmids.
Secret power-ups, something like that you need to go hunt down. But let me tell you a thing, as a man who's playing through Homefront: The Revolution, which, just as a means, only because a means to unlock Time Splitters 2, which I know sounds like I've lost my actual mind, but it is a real thing. Have a bit of a Google, Secret Time Splitters 2, hidden inside Homefront: The Revolution. Going back through that game and playing something that is, sort of Far Cry in a city, and approaching different mission objectives, whichever way I want, like using verticality, going up and down different buildings or whatever, and sort of interacting with different NPCs, and then going towards the different targets and stuff like that. The open world sensibility always does add something else to the way that you play those games. I don't know how much that translates across to Bioshock, because I can't think of how they would separate that stuff out. Like, I guess you would just tell sort of a whole handful of different stories alongside, but in terms of making the gameplay side of it engaging and worthwhile in an open world space, I don't know, like the Bioshock's always been a weird sort of mix where Ken Levine always said he wanted to satisfy the brains and the brawn, and you've sort of got these really highbrow style stories, big, philosophical sort of time travel-y type stories, and then just big old gore fest burying a claw spinner thing into some dude's face in Bioshock Infinite, and trying to do a bit of both. So I don't know, I'm curious about it. I'm pretty sure, I'm going to put this out there, I know that the original version of Bioshock was more plant-based, that it was way more botanical. All the powers were based around plant powers and, interacting with different, sort of like using vines and stuff like that. That was some original sketched-out version of Bioshock that got scrapped. And part of me remembers reading about that it was way more free-form as well. Not that Rapture and Columbia don't have their various different ways that you can approach those levels, but I think that idea, that sensibility of just, here's a set of powers, here's a bigger open space, here you go. I think that was something that was written into the very first document about Bioshock. Could be wrong, but I think that was in there.
I think it was, and I think even if it wasn't, you can see as the series developed how the ambitions to make these, really interesting, really gorgeous in some ways worlds that the team created, to make them more explorable. I mean, if you go back to the initial trailers for Bioshock Infinite, they're way bigger in scale than what we actually got in the final game, which was much more linear. You could still, obviously use the skyhook to go from place to place, but if you look at those trailers, you're literally going from city block in the sky to city block in the sky. And I think it makes sense for this series in particular to widen that up, make it more open world overtly, because I don't think anyone played Bioshock 1, Bioshock 2, Bioshock Infinite and said, you know what, I could have spent less time in those cities. I could have spent less time looking around. A huge part of the enjoyment is finding out about the history of these places and being able to freely explore. Some of the best parts of Bioshock 2, which is a criminally overlooked game, and, the DLC for Infinite and parts of Infinite itself, pretty much the entire series I've just mentioned there, are just the moments where you can walk around, you can interact with some of the audio tapes, and you can take in everything that the great designers have designed. So I think if you spread that out to a world that you can fully explore. Like you said, though, without losing the core of what makes the series great, and that is the storytelling, that is the characterization, that is the mythology that comes with each new city that is explorable. I think you can make something really special. I don't want them to do an Ubisoft open world or a Homefront the Revolution open world where you're just going from icon to icon.
They're the two standards now.
They are the two standards. They absolutely are. I'd rather it be like Arkham City style, Arkham Asylum style, you know, a little bit smaller, a little bit more dense, but still free-form in how you can go from place to place.
Well, the thing is, you're on about like the that idea of like some of the most interesting parts of Bioshock as it stands are just when you get given like a semi-open space to explore. And like I've been replaying Bioshock Infinite, and like some of the best parts of that game are the very beginning when you're first discovering Columbia, and you walk around that initial space next to the big sort of statue in the distance, and you're like going in and out of different shops and just seeing all the different signage that's around there and realizing what attitudes are prevalent in that space and everything else. And like, yeah, I mean, maybe there's a way to do that in like a more open world sort of setting, like whilst also pulling you towards different mission types and everything. The thing that makes me worry are a couple of things. Like one is that Ken Levine's not involved. He's got his own separate studio. Obviously, dude was the figurehead of Bioshock in the first place. Didn't work on Bioshock 2, but then did return for Bioshock Infinite. He's not involved with this whatsoever. Like you said, Cloud Chamber are brand new. I don't even think he's on board as a consultant or anything like that. And also, it's still published by 2K. Who are, you know, not averse to chasing the dollar, let's say.
Yeah.
And when it comes to, you know, big top tier publishers who are very happy to put in monetization methods or different models like that, I wouldn't put it past them to look at Bioshock, look at the amount of popularity that's around it, and then go, we'll sell you some bonus plasmids, or we'll sell you this different, you know, DLC packs or different things like that. With the original creator gone, there's not going to be any pushback from that, from a new studio especially, and the cynic in me worries.
No, I mean, I don't think it's entirely unfounded, especially because you said this is 2K. But, you know, 2K has also made some games that aren't that, you know, exploitative. You know, you look at, I'm playing through Borderlands 2, not Borderlands 2, Borderlands 3, for instance, right now.
Right.
And I'm surprised at how much that offers you up front from a content perspective and how little it feels like it's encouraging me to buy the DLC or buy things like that.
They also put casinos in NBA, though. Like, I just don't...
Listen.
I don't know.
Listen. I'm not saying they're flawless. All I'm saying is when it comes to some of their franchises, they're a little bit more respectful. And when it comes to others, they're just like, how much money can we get out of you as possible? I'm not saying they're good. I'm not even saying that I trust them with, you know, making this game. But, you know, I have to hope they're going to read the room, because all that stuff is very not in fashion at the moment, especially when it's done so aggressively, and especially when it comes to a series like Bioshock, which is so single-player driven, which is so centered around the story. I think the moment they start brushing up with anything else, you know, it might be difficult to sell, especially because, like you said, this team is unproven, and while I don't think you necessarily need the original creators to make a good Bioshock game, because Bioshock 2 is proof that you simply, you know, don't, that's an awesome game, you know, they're still kind of fighting an uphill battle, because it's been a long time since Bioshock was around, and people absolutely love that original trilogy, even though Infinite kind of like took a lot of flack from the gameplay perspective. It's still, you know, a lot of people's, some of people's favorites, if anything. So, you know, they're fighting this uphill battle, and I have to hope they're going to do it proper, and I have to hope the fact that we haven't heard something in so long means that they are trying to do it well. You know, I could be proven wrong, but they could have rushed out a Bioshock 4 like 2 years after Infinite, 3 years after Infinite, and they didn't, which kind of, to me, bodes well.
Well, the way that Infinite ended, where it was just sort of Ken Levine sort of tying a bow on it and just being like, there's always going to be a lighthouse, a man, there's always going to be a city or whatever, and literally sort of addressing in a meta sense of like, look, this is an infinite thing, and I'm going to bow out, this is my time, but like, you know, it could keep going. And then sort of like, where did they go from there? But yeah, I mean, like the innovations in regards to the open world stuff, I'm interested by that. Like you said, Bioshock 2 like managed to do well enough. Like the combat mechanics are like solid enough that you can do an enjoyable Bioshock style game. I just wonder how much a new team would, you know, sort of try and do the big twist, like do a Bioshock style twist or do something like that. But the earliest rumor that we covered was a couple of years ago, so assumedly it's been in the works for a long time. And like you said, 2K have got out there and announced that it's, you know, officially put it out there, but it was just a blog post. They're not sort of singing and dancing about it. So I guess right now they're still sort of like securing, you know, the core of the game, like it being this open world thing, whether or not it returns to something like the plant-based stuff that I mentioned before. And I guess all those things we'll have to keep an eye on. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments comments below of a Bioshock 4. What would you want from the franchise? Do you want them to go back to things that were prevalent in the first trilogy, or should it make a big old break and be something more like an open world game? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.